Hey everyone, thanks so much for joining me for this new episode of Inspiring Our World. And indeed, I am inspired because I get to chat today with one of my most favorite people in Nikken, a longtime friend, Dennis Williams. Dennis and Ruth Williams have built an extraordinary business with Nikken. They are royal ambassadors. I love them both so much with all my heart. And I'm thrilled, Dennis, that you are willing to be with me today and take time out of your very precious life for me and for us here. So thank you for being with me today.
Oh, you're welcome, Julie.
It's great to be with you. And we haven't seen each other in person for a long time, but we have known each other for somewhere in the range of 27 years, I'm going to say, pretty much going on 28 for me now.
That's right.
How long have you been in Nikken?
December 9th, 1991 we joined, so that's over 31 years, isn't it? Something like that.
Wow. We have so many people that have such a longevity of time, such a loyalty and a love for Nikken. Isn't it amazing?
Yeah, it is. It's been awesome.
I think it's quite unusual in network marketing too, because I think in network marketing, quite often people bounce around a lot and move from company to company to, product to product. But we have many people who've been involved for over 20 years. Why do you think that is?
Well, it's a company that's solid as a rock. And that's one thing. And the products are so unique and unusual and effective and it's just a great community of people, and you make great friends, and they're lifelong friends, just like you and I.
Yes.
It's like a big family. You wouldn't want to divorce your family.
Yes, I feel that way too. I was like, there's no way I could divorce Nikken. I love it way too much. I love the people way too much. And like you say, it's a combination, isn't it, of the strength and solidity of the company, the products that are extraordinary, and then the people that, of course, make it make it happen. We all make it happen.
Yeah, we have friends all over the world. When I was before Nikken, I never left the state, hardly at all. And of course now I've been to every state in the United States doing presentations and making friends, and meeting people in a lot of countries. And when I go to the foreign countries, especially, I hardly ever stayed in a hotel. I was always invited to stay in their homes, and they took me around and treated me like family. It's just been an incredible venture.
Yes, I've always loved the travel, the international travel with Nikken. It's a big part of the joy of doing it and being in these different countries and learning the customs. And like you say, staying in people's homes. I much preferred that than ever staying in fancy hotels, which I did for a bit. And then I was like, this is kind of lonely. I don't care how fancy it is. I'd much rather be at the family dinner table,
That's right. Yeah, it's crazy. And I've seen so many neat things. I'll go to somewhere and I might have a meeting in the evening, but in the daytime, I maybe have a little extra time. And they'll take me to see things, that most people never see.
Yes.
That are really interesting. And I'll never forget some of those things, the museums and the different, just local things that most people never get to experience. And it's just been incredible.
Oh, marvelous. Oh gosh, my mind is now going to when I was in Russia and the Hermitage Museum, going to St. Petersburg, going to all the museums in Moscow, going to Gorky Park. I remember in Sweden seeing the swans on the ocean, on the sea. And I was like, I've never seen swans only in rivers. From where I come from in England, they're in the rivers and not on the ocean, So things like that, The Little Mermaid, Copenhagen, lots of memories like this. So it makes for a very rich life, I would say. Yeah, on many levels.
Oh yeah. I'm just thinking about meeting people and the love that people have for you and everything, and we have for each other. Remember when Ruth and I went on a trip to Taiwan, a Royal Ambassador trip that we had, and we landed there, and gosh, we were met at the airport with a couple of ladies with bouquets of flowers, and they had an interpreter for us, and we stayed in this palatial hotel. And then when we did the meetings, we walked down this hallway and they took a picture of Ruth and I. It was off the cover of the Nikken magazine.
Yes.
Blown it up and had it on easels all the way down the hallway. They're like rock stars walking down there. And all these people come up and gave us hugs. And the only English that we heard was, "I love you."
Wow.
They just hug and say, "I love you." What an experience. I mean, who would have
That
thought
is
something like that?
beautiful. That is beautiful. And that's like where our hug, the hugging, which we've all missed during this time when we're all virtual, right? I miss the hug so much. I love hugging. I love hugging and I love being hugged, both.
Yeah, me too.
So, well, let's talk a little, if you will, about, I'd love to hear some of your product stories. 'Cause I know you've got really profound product stories, and then your business, which you have just built to unprecedented heights. So let's talk about that. What happened with the products?
Yeah, well, start with, way back when, we were approached a lot of times about Nikken, but we didn't pay attention. I was in the car business and I was working 7 days a week a lot of times, and you never know how things are going to, who life you will affect how. I mean, there's some divine intervention coming along here, I'm sure.
Oh, yes.
Because apparently there was a guy that knew about Nikken that was in a restaurant one day talking to somebody about it, and somebody that knew Ruth and I overheard that conversation and walked over to him and said, "You should go see Dennis Williams at Valley Ford because he knows about network marketing." And this guy, out of the blue, comes over there. If a person wouldn't have told him that, he would never talk to me. But I wasn't interested in anything. He gave me an envelope, and I'd stick it in my filing cabinet, and he'd come back and I'd hand it back. And this kind of went on for several months. And after a while, it kind of got to be a joke around the dealership, that they would announce over the loudspeaker, "Here comes the Magnet Man to see Dennis again." And this went on for like 6 months. But 1991 was a recessionary year. It was not a great year in the car business. And in December, I was out on the lot, and this fellow stopped by again after I told him to stop bugging me. He handed me a little audio cassette tape. And I listened to that tape, and there was a fellow on there that had a lot of success. So I called him up and talked to him, and he came up and talked to Ruth and I, and then we joined, and then I got the product. And my younger sister had a back problem. She was a nurse, and she lifted a patient and hurt her back and was out of work for like 10 weeks one year. And she was over, and I was telling her about the the Backflex, the Magflex, and she said she'd try it. So I let her have it for the weekend, and by golly, it turned her around. I mean, her back just stopped hurting, and for whatever reason. And then there was a fellow down at work that noticed that my desk partner was selling a truck to him, and he was kind of having a hard time getting out of his truck. So I walked up to him, and I didn't know him at all. I just said, "Looks like you're having a back problem." He said, "Oh, I am." I said, "This is going to sound really weird, but I got something might be able to help you," and I didn't know. So I gave him one of those, and he took it home, and it was a Saturday, I think it was. And on Monday morning, his wife called me at work. She said, "Mr. Williams, my husband got up this morning, he turned up the stereo, he's dancing around like a teenager." First time in 20 years he felt this good. So that's when Ruth and I really saw what this could be. I mean, we knew that 8 out of 10 adults in this country have a back problem.
Yes.
We had something that everybody needed and nobody had, and they couldn't buy it anywhere else. And that's a marketer's dream right there, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
So we just started talking, and Ruth was on the phone talking to folks and inviting them to come, and we'd have our little meetings there in Yakima, Washington, and the guests would sit there, but I mean, the testimonies were coming from the people right next to them, so it was like a live infomercial right there, and it just kept growing and growing. And it's hard to believe that 8 weeks later, I left my job at the Ford dealership, and that became our full-time career, and has been ever since. So that's kind of how it all started with the products.
That is very spunky, that within 8 weeks you left and you are very successful in the car industry, I know. So you left because you took a real leap, sort of like I did, a quantum leap, a quantum shift happened, and you said, saying what I said, this is something that really works, nobody has it, and everybody needs it. Because that is your marketer's dream, so long as you let people know, right? You used to say this, I remember, when you find something that people will get on top of the roof and shout it from the rooftops, you got a winner. And I remember going, yeah, I'm going to shout this from the rooftops. And I've been shouting from the rooftops. I mean, hopefully not shouting, but you know what I mean? Like metaphorically shouting, letting people know.
Yeah, and I don't recommend people do what I do and quit their job in 8 weeks, but because, money never motivated us a whole lot. But I'll tell you what, poverty sure did. So that's why we went to work. Unfortunately, it turned out.
That's a really good distinction. I would say the same, that money's never been a particular motivator for me, but not having money has been a real motivator for me, because it's not fun when you're worrying about taking care of your children, paying your rent or mortgage. Can you manage? Can you pay your car payment? It's not fun to be in that situation at all. And that's kind of like a pitchfork behind you, right? So
yeah, like Zig Ziglar says, money isn't everything, but it ranks pretty close to oxygen. When you need it, you need it.
Yes, absolutely. I miss him. I loved it that he became a sort of one of our Nikken ambassadors, as you will, it was so lovely to see that a man of his stature really put his stamp on Nikken, really believed in it so powerfully.
I'll never forget that one day the phone rang and, he got the caller ID. And I looked on there and it said Zig Ziglar. I thought, that can't be true. And it was. He was calling us to have an interview.
Oh my gosh, wonderful. Yeah. I never knew that. That is so great. Now, there is a time I remember when you had an unexpected heart issue and you weren't able to work for a while, right?
Yeah.
Tell us what happened with that, because that's powerful.
It's a couple times, actually, Julie. The first time was in 1996, and I was in St. Louis doing weekend meetings, and that night I was back in the hotel, and it's kind of numb under my jaw, and I thought, well, I must have acid reflux or something, I was in denial, kind of, but I had the back flex with me, and I stuck it on my chest, under my shirt, and as long as I kind of had that there, I didn't notice the symptoms too much, and I should have gone home, but I went to Dallas, Texas, to do some meetings. And down there, I was feeling pretty bad, and I got back home, and I didn't say too much to Ruth about anything, I didn't want to scare her, but I had the back flex on my chest. But that night, it woke me up a couple of times, and so the next day, it was actually my birthday the next day, and I went to the we lived on the island, where we used to live, and I went to the clinic there, and I took that off my chest and left it in the seat of my pickup, and went in there, and they wired me up, and they said, this is not normal, so they gave me a nitroglycerin, and that put me into shock, and my blood pressure plummeted to 80/50, and also my hands were so clammy they left handprints on my jeans, and so the doctor got scared, and he called 911, and the ambulance came and picked me up, and they called down and had the ferry wait for us, and got over there to the hospital in Berrien, and I'm laying there in the emergency room, and they wired me back up, and the doctor said, well, your EKG is significantly different than the one you brought over from the island. And I thought, well, good, I'm getting better. And he said, you're having a heart attack right now. Laying in the emergency room. And so I said, what do we do? And he said, well, this is a Saturday, there's not a lot of people here. We have an experimental thrombolytic from the University of Washington. We can inject that into you, and there's a chance it would cause a stroke, but there's a chance 75% chance it'll open that and dissolve that clot and stop the heart attack. So I had to sign a paper, and they injected it into me, and then a short time later they did an angiogram, and I saw the picture, and everywhere that my arteries made a bend, it looked like somebody tied a string around it and cinched it up. Ooh. So a few days later, I was up in Providence Hospital in Seattle and had 6-way bypass surgery, and came out of there, and I was good for about 14 years. And then in 2010, I had the same symptoms again. And I don't know if you remember, we were in Cancun, and you and I were actually dancing together to do some music there.
Yeah.
I wasn't feeling too well, but anyway, you came up and asked me to dance with you, so I did.
You're such a good sport. It's all right. Yeah. You through that.
And I sang karaoke that night. I wasn't feeling too good then either, but anyway, I got back home and I went to the physician, the cardiologist, and told him my symptoms. He said, well, that sounds worrisome. I said, well, that's why I'm here. He says, well, we'll do an angiogram on Friday. This was on a Tuesday. Well, Thursday morning, I woke up really early. In our church, I was kind of in charge over the seminary where the high school kids go to religious class where they go to school. And I visit those classes once in a while. And but they weren't on the island. So, I'm up early anyway. I'll go down and go to one of those classes. So I drove down to the ferry dock, and I'm feeling pretty bad. So I called Ruth and woke her up, and I said, I'm not going to that seminary class. I'm going to the hospital. She said, you get somebody to drive you there. I said, I don't know anybody on the 5:20 a.m. ferry. And she said, so I'm sitting on the ferry, and it's parked toward the back of, and there's a passenger deck up above, and then there's stairwells on both ends. So I'm sitting and wondering how I'm going to make it there. Ferry docked. I look up, and two of my friends from church came walking down that stairway that never would have been there. Let's talk about divine intervention.
Oh, yes.
One of them rides in the van pool, so he wouldn't have been there. The other guy leaves his car parked off the island, and he walks off the front end of the ferry to his car to save money. Well, the other guy that walks off the front was given a ride by the guy that brought his car, because the guy that rides in the van pool, his personal automobile had some parts coming in, and he had it parked right by mine. He drove his own car that day. And so I asked the guy that had his car off the island, I just hollered out the window and said, hey, I need your help, man. He got in the car with me. I drove a couple blocks to his car, and he drove me up and dumped me off at the hospital.
Wow.
And I walked in the emergency room, and I got a problem here. So they laid me down, started wiring me up, and I had the backpacks on my chest. I forgot it was there. And the guy that was undressing me, he said, what's this? I said, oh, that's just to keep my blood moving, And he kind of shrugged his shoulders and threw it in the bag with my clothes. And then they wired me. I said, well, you're not having a heart attack. I thought, oh, good. I'm just a day early for my angiogram. So I called Ruth, and she was on the way with one of my son-in-laws. And I said, I'm okay. I'll see you when you get here. I laid my phone down, and 5 minutes later, there was a flurry of activity around me, and this nurse started gluing defibrillator pads on my chest.
Oh.
And I said, if you have to use those, does it hurt? And she said, yes. And they started to move me, and that's the last I remember. And when Ruth got there, she asked for me, and they said, oh, you have to see the social nurse. And they took her in her private room, and they said, you can't see your husband because we're working on him. She said, what do you mean working on him? His heart stopped, and we can't get it started. And they were in there pounding on my chest, and Ruth broke out in hives, and, it was a terrible thing. Yeah. Anyway, somewhere there, they obviously got a heartbeat again, and the cardiologist showed up and did a catheterization and siphoned the clots out of there was a vein graft they did in 14 years earlier. The vein graft had plugged up, and they put 3 stents in there after they got the clots out. But I was in ICU for 5 days, but I survived all that, and I came out of there, and then when I was in the recovery area, doctors would examine me every day. But Ruth had brought the Nikken comforter and put it on me.
Yes.
And I had the mag steps in my socks.
Oh, yes.
Bringing me Mag water every day to drink, and and some nutritional things and stuff from Nikken.
Perfect.
And the doctors told me, he says, Dennis, you're recovering faster than anybody we've ever seen.
Really?
And so I was out of there not too long, and I had a nuclear scan here a while back. That's been 12 years ago now.
Now, I seem to remember you saying, and this probably was the first time you had this heart issue, I remember that you got like bagfuls of mail from Nikken, the Nikken community saying, we hope you're better. And that your income from Nikken didn't waver during the time you couldn't work.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
What a blessing that was. I'll tell you, what a blessing.
So that's the power of building a team that you, unfortunate that you got sick, unfortunate that you had to take the time off, but you could, whereas if you'd been in the car industry still, you would have had no income, right?
Nobody would have sold a car from me.
Right.
Yeah.
But your team was still flourishing and doing their thing. Yep. And you were able to benefit. This is such a beautiful thing about residual income, about building a network marketing business that I find it's extraordinary, really, because you end up kind of having power over time in a way that isn't normal. And so let's go to that a little bit. First of all, we're seeing huge growth in the wellness industry more than ever. It's a $4 trillion industry globally, and it's growing 6.6% per year. That's powerful. And then network marketing also is growing at about the same rate, 6.6%. And so Nikken has a very special spot there between the two, right? Network marketing and the wellness industry. What do you see with this?
Yeah, it's a perfect place, because a lot of times you ask people, do you know anybody that would like more money, better health, and more free time? And I've never had anybody say, Dennis, I want less money, worse health, and no free time at all. So we really have something for everybody.
Yes.
But the wellness home concept is such a beautiful thing, where you can furnish your home with technologies that enhance your family's life. It's like living in a greenhouse for your family.
Yes.
We just love that concept, and it just makes, healthy air that we breathe, healthy sleep that we get, the water that we drink. We know that everything is the best we can put into our body and the best thing we can surround our bodies with.
Yes. Yes.
Just perfect.
Epigenetics is powerful, right? I mean, creating the right environment to thrive in is critical, and something that's not talked about nearly enough. I love the wellness home concept. I find it thrilling and complete common sense. Of course, we need nature. Of course, we need the earth's field and the sun's energy and everything else. Of course we do. Like we're part of the ecosystem. We need the ecosystem to thrive. So I love that it's not just about nutritionals and the chemistry of the body. I love it that it's about the energetics of the body that precede the chemistry of the body. I find this a never-ending, fascinating conversation to have.
Yeah, a cleaner, healthier body will fix itself.
Exactly. And if you do that, you have that wellness home day and night, as we all do and have enjoyed. I mean, it's the greatest blessing. Gosh, aside from our relationships, our family, our loved ones, it's to me such a great blessing that's why we can never stop talking about it. We should never, because when you're given such a gift, you've got to give it. You've got to give it away, don't you? Do you feel that way?
I feel like the have a moral obligation to share what you know. Our job is simply to educate. It's their job to decide. But if you don't educate, you never know what decision they might be. You have a choice to make.
Absolutely. I really love that. So how do you, that's such a great point, because I feel the same. I feel like our job is to be a messenger. And whether somebody picks up the message and gets it or not, I mean, it is their prerogative to choose yes, no, maybe, later, whatever. And like you said, it took you a long time in the beginning too, because you weren't quite listening. And I also wasn't listening when it was first introduced to me. And they didn't have any of the products. And I'm such a kinesthetic person. I needed to feel things. And when I finally got to feel that backflex, then magflex we call it now, the newer technology, on my back, and it helped my back so much, that I'd been in agony, and then suddenly I wasn't, and I was like, what's going on? That was when I started to really listen to the power of not only the technologies but the business side of it, and got as excited about the business as about the products. Right.
Yeah, and a good way to maybe start a conversation, you can be talking to somebody just casually, and the question might be, I'm just curious, if there's one thing in your life you could change that would make it better, what would that be? And people tell you things, and pretty much anything they tell you, can be a help for. Right?
I love that. And one of the things that has struck me about you is that you're so gentle in your approach, and you're so trustworthy. Like if we were together and we were sitting on the ferry and and you started asking me those questions and just listening, I know I would trust you, because I feel that with you. I feel that trust and that centeredness and the kindness that you project, and you always have and always will. It's who you are. Don't you think that's super important? That, like, one of the things I love about our Nikken community is that people are just so good. They're good human beings. They're heart-centered, loving human beings, and they're intelligent enough to take a different course in life with products, with business, and we can trust them. That's a lovely thing.
Genuine people.
Genuine. You are genuine. Ruth is genuine. And Ruth, of course, being a teacher, she has always been good at educating.
Yeah, this business attracts nice people.
Yeah. I mean, that's a blessing. That's a blessing, because you're going to work with them for a long period of time, right?
Right.
And so you need to be able to trust them, and they need to be able to trust you. And of course, we're all going to make mistakes along the way because we're human, but and I think what you said also about divine intervention, like I really feel like that, because when it came to me, I had really asked, show me a way. I'm very open. I'm very willing. And I already loved natural healthcare. I was already doing that. I'd had a whole healing center and everything, but I knew there was another way. I wanted to bring it bigger. I wanted to bring natural modalities to the world in a bigger way. And then when Nikken came, it just sort of fit.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've had a lot of divine intervention in our business. The first year we were silvers the whole time back in the day, and we were frustrated because we couldn't find any leaders. And then there was some divine intervention that led us to 2 couples within a couple of months that became a catalyst for everything else. You just know where your influence will end. It's just amazing. But if you ever quit, you'll never know.
Yes, and that brings me to the thought of, patience. Like, I have never been the most patient person, I'll be honest. I'm kind of fiery and redhead, and I want things to happen yesterday. And I had to really learn about patience, and that if you keep putting the message out there, that the right people will show up, because it's as if there's a giant jigsaw puzzle going on, and then the pieces fall into place as and when they're supposed to. That's how it feels to me. And so those people would show up in obscure ways sometimes too.
That's right.
I think we have many stories, all of us, about how we met people that became rock stars, in our business, and just like the apparent randomness of it, but really it isn't random. It's about divine right action in divine right time, divine right meetings, divine appointments. I feel like we really have those.
Yeah, and another thing too, a lot of people, the relationships that you build in Nikken, a lot of times, I remember when we were trying to become Royal Diamonds, we needed another platinum, and we invited a couple to come over that had just been kind of idling along, but we really liked them, and we just, when they came in the house, we just told them, hey, we need another platinum. We want you to be it, and they just kind of gasped. But they said, okay, we will, and they went to work. And by golly, I remember we were driving down the road one day, and they called us up and they said, guess what? And they didn't say we're platinums. They said, guess what? You and Ruth are Royal Diamonds. They did it for us more than for themselves. What a cool thing that was.
That is so lovely to hear that. And I think that's definitely true, that very often we rise to our greatness for someone else. Yeah. I know, like for me, my children were a major catalyst. I was like, I have to be the provider for my children. I can't have them be undefended. I've got to really be this protector for them. And they were so much what helped me to keep going out there, to find those magical people that would see what I saw and do what I was doing, because of course so much of it is action. I mean, it is vision, and it's developing the imagination to see yourself being really successful and helping many, many people in this world. And actually then the success comes as a result of that. So it is a lot in the mind and the heart, but then there's action. I mean, without action, nothing's going to happen. You have to go out there and be brave and courageous and meet with people, be willing to have those conversations.
Right.
And you've really done that in spades. I mean, Dennis, the amount of meetings, and I love hearing your story, because I know that both of you, I mean, you're like a power couple, because you had all your skill set, and then Ruth has all her skill set, and together you were such a dynamic power couple that you achieved the loftiest of dreams.
Yeah, we were a great combination, Ruth and I. That's for sure.
Yes, absolutely. One of the things I've always loved that you've said is when people have asked you, what's your favorite product, which we know, like in terms of the wellness home is really hard to say because we love everything. But you have always said, my favorite product is freedom. Can you talk more about that?
Yeah, when I got out of college, I was told like everybody else, go to college, get a degree, create a resume, pass it around, get a job at a good company, work your way up, keep your nose clean, someday retire and live happily ever after. So I went to work for a major corporation, and 12 and a half years later, it wasn't turning out that way. I got tired of the drama, that was going on there, and the nepotism and all the stuff that happens, and I just got frustrated with it. So that's when we started in network marketing, way back in 1975, actually.
Yeah.
And I did that for, and then actually went full time in that company for about 10 years. But we made a living. We never became financially independent, but we made a living, and we got to touch of what freedom was like. And but then I had 3 kids starting college at the same time, and didn't quite have enough income generated there to support that. So that's when I got in the car business. So for 5 years, I sold Ford cars and trucks, and Ruth was managing the business. And then Nikken came along, and the story from there on. But gosh, I'm virtually unemployable. I could never work for anybody again, because and network marketing is the absolute best way to engage in entrepreneurship, and the least expensive way, and the least riskiest way. It's absolutely perfect. And we had 3 biological children, and then when our youngest was about 17, I guess Ruth thought it was going to be a little too quiet around the house, so she applied for a foster baby. Yeah, we got this little girl. She was 3 days old, right out of the hospital, weighed less than 5 pounds. Ruth brought her in the door, and I just fell in love with her immediately, of course. And then we got another little daughter, a little Native American daughter that came into our home, and she was about 2, and that through some family friends. And so we had these 2 little girls, and we just raised them up, and we were able to adopt both of them eventually. But when they were about 11, 12 years old, I guess it was, Ruth was homeschooling them. And we decided that we wanted to take a family trip that would be educational for the girls and business trip for us. So we had a motorhome and took the vehicle on the back of it. And January of that year, we took off and headed south. We were along the coast to stay out of the snow, and went down to California. And Ruth had planned all this out. She set up all the meetings, for every Saturday we were doing a major event somewhere. And during the week, we would do wellness previews, but nothing where we had to hurry. And we'd find that we'd get to that town, we'd pull into find an RV park, and we had a washer and dryer in the motorhome, actually. So, we'd set it all up and get our clothes washed and get in the vehicle and drive to the meeting and meet all our friends and people and just do presentations. And then we'd head out across and went across the southern states, and we took the girls to the Alamo, and we teach them about it. We took them there. All these things, we got this experience stuff. We ended up in Florida, and we had an RV park in Miami, and then a bunch of our friends flew in. I think we had about 300 of them flew in with it, and we all got on a cruise ship together. And we went out there and we cruised, and during at sea days, they let us use one of the big rooms like they had, where they had entertainment for our Nikken presentations. Nice. And we do that, and then the final night we had invitations that we gave to the people that we met during the week, and they'd come, and we had a lot of guests show up, and that's where some of our leaders came from. And then we came back, and we spent a week in Orlando at Disney World and so on. And then we went up in Tennessee and went to the Grand Ole Opry, and then we came back, and I remember stopping at Carlsbad Caverns and going through that with the girls. And anyway, we drove 11,000 miles in that motorhome trip.
Wow.
21 different states, and we were gone for 3 months. And I had one part-time employee, a good friend, who was home opening the mail and paying the bills, as we didn't have a lot of technology as much as we do today, So she was doing that for me. And came home and found out we'd earned a pretty significant income while we were on vacation, if you might call it that. And I've got a doctor friend who told me, he says, a doctor couldn't do that. And one of my friends he's a doctor. He said, I never take a vacation. And I said, why is that? He said, because if I leave, I'm not earning any income. I still got my office staff. I got to pay them. Then I got to pay for the vacation. So I'm losing 3 ways.
Yes.
And here we were out there enjoying the freedom of traveling with our family and seeing things and educating the girls, meeting all these wonderful friends across the country. just generating more business while we were traveling, and it certainly didn't seem like work, and we came.
I love that.
It was just beautiful. So that's just one example of the wonderful freedom. And then, of course, like you said, when something happens to you and you can't work, you got this wonderful family that's supporting themselves, and at the same time they're helping take care of us. So
yes,
the best
what
of
a
everything.
story, that 11,000 miles, and what an education for your children. What a privilege. It makes me think about, the times when I took my kids to Nikken events, and they got to be on stage and they got to speak and work with Bob Proctor, the whole teen program he did. It just, so much life experience that I was able to provide for them, as you were doing with your girls there. So that's really profound, actually, and very rare. One other thing, just in terms of kids, I always remember going to all the sports games. My son was really into baseball particularly, and how few parents were ever there. And when somebody's parent did come, how the kids that kid would light up because, his dad was there or his mom was there. And, I was there, and Ryan's dad also was there, every game.
Yeah.
And I always thought that was such a privilege as a parent to be able to do that, and really good for him to see how much we cared. And same went for the girls with their gymnastics and with their singing and everything they did, that we, never missed anything. And always the time, I could use time wisely. I could use time in a way that felt like my value system was never compromised with time. I think that's what I'm trying to say here is, I could put their needs up front always. And then, the business would flow around. And very often I met new people at the baseball games, and they'd become new seniors and executives in my Nikken team, because, they were looking for answers for injuries and stuff like that. And we know how great the products are for athletes. I mean, heck, it's fantastic. I mean, Herb Ratt talks about that all the time, like he's so knowledgeable about athletes and our products. And being an athlete myself, I'm like, yeah, I'm really into that, let's work with that. So I would bring in lots of new people into the team just through being at those events for my kids.
That's again part of the freedom part. I remember when our youngest daughter was she'd go to school part-time when she was homeschooling. They had a trip planned to Washington D.C., for educational trip, and we went. Took our sons with us, and we didn't have to ask anybody if we could take time off or anything. We just I love the freedom of having your own time to do whatever you want to do whenever you want to do it, help whoever you want to help. You never have to worry about, do you have the time or the money?
I feel like right now, in this time here, we're beginning this whole new year of 2023, and I feel like, especially, because of the last few years and the changes, people want to work from home. They don't want to go work in an office so much anymore. Many people are changing their whole way of doing that. Working remotely is a big thing. And that's a beautiful thing about modern technology, right? That we can work remotely. And I feel like there's never been a better time, especially with this focus on health and wellness and people realizing they have to take more responsibility for their own health. They can't just give it over to the medical profession or whatever. I just think we have the best time coming. I really feel it. Like, I think I'm so excited about the future with Nikken. I truly am. Do you feel the same way? Are you seeing what I'm seeing?
Yeah. And the company, of course, has made some adjustments to the, incentives and so forth for next year. They're really going to streamline everything and give people more money up front. And it'll be a great year.
Yes, absolutely. For this year. Yeah, absolutely. I'm really thrilled with the new incentives. I'm thrilled with the extra updates on the comp plan. I love it. It just makes complete sense. I love the focus on the more of the month and getting things happening, because we know it does take focus. It's the focus. I always remember one wonderful leader saying, Julie, it's just always ask the question of yourself, how many people am I going to talk to today? How many new people? How many people in my team am I going to help to find how many? That that sense of abundance of people. There is an abundance of people that need what we have on all these levels we've been talking about. How can we go wrong unless we don't talk to people?
Yeah.
In whatever form we use, whether we use social media, whether we use podcasts like this, whether we use, the telephone, it doesn't matter so long as we're in connection and communication and educating, like you say.
Yeah. Wake up in the morning, look in the mirror and say, I wonder who's going to be fortunate enough to get into a conversation with me today.
Oh, I love that. Well, I love that. I think this is a perfect place to complete our conversation. I am just absolutely love you, Dennis. Please give my love to Ruth. I'm thrilled that you spent this time with me today. And I hope all of you out there really thoroughly enjoyed this conversation as much as we did. Please remember to follow this podcast. You can follow it on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts. Please rate the podcast and share the podcast. Sharing is everything in Nikken. That is what we do. That is who we are. We are messengers. And so thank you again, Dennis, so much.
Well, thank you, Julia. I really enjoyed visiting with you. Be good to see you in person again someday soon.
I can't wait. Absolutely. We'll see you later and have a wonderful week, everyone. And we'll talk soon. Bye for now.